Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Randy, the Acu RMT, and today I am just delighted to have Randy Ellingson with me as a guest. I am not going to do a large introduction for Randy because I want this interview to be a lot of his story. Randy is really a pillar and a center of development for massage therapy in Saskatchewan and in the prairies themselves. And I don't think most people know or understand how massage therapy developed throughout the prairies, and it's different than other provinces. And Randy would be the expert in that because you were just a cornerstone in the development of massage therapy in these provinces. So I want to jump right into it. Randy, welcome. Thank you for being here. And I want you to start with your story of how you got into massage therapy and how things have really been molded through the Prairie provinces with massage therapy.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me on, Brandy. I think it's great that you're running doing the different video presentations and really giving people the opportunity to hear other views, So yeah, well, but to start off, boy, those are some big topics. What got me involved in the massage field? Well, the fact of the matter was I started out actually working in medicine. First thing I was an orderly. And due to changes that occurred, like I was a senior orderly, and I worked in the Pasqua Hospital as well as at, geez, I can't even think what the name of the seniors home was there, right next door to it. But I was involved in training other orderlies that were starting out and that sort of thing. But what happened was during a strike one time, it ended up being that they started to take away the rehabilitative side of what we were doing with clients. And so that got me interested in looking at, what else would I like to do in this area. So I looked at going to do my doctorate, become a physician, and several different things. But so that was one thing what happened at one point. And then the other thing that happened was I used to wrestle for we've been to Germany wrestling and wrestled for Canada a little bit, and also did a lot of different things traveling around. But I got injured at one time in my lower back, which kind of stopped me from doing any more wrestling. And it introduced me to Don Bennett at the YMCA. And started treating my back, and he said, why don't this is a field you might get interested in. So I started looking into it. The first course that I took in massage therapy as I was working in the hospitals, though, was back in the day. You used to get books of matches, and on the inside of the matches there were all different kinds of courses you could take. So the first course that I took was a massage correspondence massage course out of Chicago.
Okay.
And 20 years later, I find out that Abe Reimer had taken the same course out of Chicago, which was quite interesting back in the day. So, it was all 100% correspondence. That was the first training that I had in massage and getting into it. And then I got involved with Don Bennett, they were running the tutorial service for the Northern College out of England here in Canada, and I got involved in doing that because at the time my wife worked with Don Bennett, and that's how I got started into the massage therapy field. And I remember completing I think it was my first year of studies, and I went and talked to Don, and I said, Don, I have an opportunity to take over a clinic here. I'd like to get your advice on it. And his response to me was, oh, no, you're not going to do that because you're going to be too busy next week. I said, what? I said, well, why is that? And he says, because you start here on Monday. And that was my interview process.
Wow. So what did the schooling look like from the Northern Institute? Because in Regina particularly, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it was my understanding that the Northern Institute was established as like the first school in Regina for massage therapy. And under Don Bennett, was Abe involved with that as well? And then like mostly evenings and weekends, what was like the amount of hours of study? What did it all look like?
Well, that's all tied to the Prairie provinces. So how about we go back to the beginning?
Yeah.
So in 1972, the province of Alberta contacted the Northern Institute of Massage in England because they wanted to establish a training program within Alberta that was short duration. They had some issues that they wanted help with, and they wanted a short duration massage program. So they contacted Ken Woodward in England, who ran the Northern Institute of Massage. And they invited Ken to come over and meet with the provincial government in Alberta.
Okay.
So after negotiating and talking with them and trying to find out what it was that they were really looking for, they established the first training program in Alberta in 1972. Now that course was actually a massage and it was actually part of a massage and beauty therapy course.
Okay.
It was only a very short duration program. That's why in the province of Alberta, you have all these short duration massage schools because they built out of that short program.
Okay.
Right? So things went on there till 1977. And in 1977, actually in 1976, Abe Reimer had heard about this course and at that time, the Masseurs Association of Saskatchewan was forming, had formed. They'd been running since 1966. And Abe was the president.
Yeah.
So Abe went over to talk to Ken Woodward when he was over doing some of the training, Ken Woodward and Stan Duncan. And so they created a relationship with Ken that they wanted to eventually bring this course into Saskatchewan. And then in 1978, there was some issues happened in Alberta with the people that were running the program out of there. And Abe Reimer got a phone call from Ken Woodward and said, I want you to go to Alberta and remove everything out of Alberta and bring it to Saskatchewan. So Abe then did. Got in the back of his truck from Swift Current, drove out to Calgary, clicked up all the materials and the stuff that related to Ken and the Northern, and brought it to Saskatchewan. We started our first program in Saskatchewan in 1978.
Okay.
So
what did the climate for massage therapy as an industry look like at that time? Was it something, did people go for a lot of massage? I wasn't even born then, so I don't even know.
No.
What was the climate there?
In Saskatchewan, there were 8 practicing massage therapists.
Okay.
That we were aware of. There were a lot of people that did all kinds of courses, then called it massage. Some did zone therapy. There's a very, very well-known practitioner by the name of Fox out of northern Saskatchewan who did zone therapy. There was a couple guys that were doing kind of more or less healing type techniques, what today probably would be called body talk, close to body talk. So there was some variances, but there was a group of 8 that formulated the first massage association in Saskatchewan, the Masseurs Association. The public doctors would laugh you out of the room if you talked about massage. There was very poor respect. It was very small, isolated little areas, very often tied to fitness facilities and those sorts of things. Massage was not very broadly, publicly known. It was known well to certain, but it was based more upon the therapist than it was upon what they were doing.
So it's almost like they were more individual healers or traditional healers, kind of that mindset type of thing.
That's true.
Okay.
So So yeah, so in 1978, they established the first training program and in Saskatchewan, and we taught it initially. We taught it out of the YMCA.
Okay.
In Regina was where we first taught it because that's where Don Bennett happened to have his practice. But what that program was, was they were the tutors for the practical. So you would come to the seminar weekend and they would teach you the practical. All the theoretical stuff was all done by correspondence back to the main campus back in England. So that was all done by snail mail. And so you would write your papers up on physiology and you would send them off in the mail, and maybe 3 months later you would get your reply back from there. So it was a drawn out process to get it. And so it carried on that way to 1978 until 1983 was kind of when I started to get involved in the course more so. And and by 1985, I was graduating out of my second program, and I was taking over more of the structure because I was the irritating student, because I would be saying to these guys, well, don't just tell me how to do it. It's like, how does this work?
Yeah.
How does it affect the body? And they would say, you just do it. We've been doing it for 20 years. Go ahead and do it. It works well. And I said, well, if I want to find out more, where do I go? They said, go back to England, which started a process that took 11 years in total. As I went to England and I would learn components of higher grade massage techniques, went into manipulative therapy, osteopathy, studied electrotherapy, did different things going back and forth. So it'd kind of be like 3 months there and 3 months here, back and forth, going through the process of getting my education in the massage therapy field. But in what happened in 1988 in Saskatchewan was they were turning over more of the administration of the school to myself. And I said, the first thing we need to do with this school is we need to, because it was called A&D Enterprises till then.
Okay.
Was the training component. And I said, what we need to do is we need to register this school properly. So in 1988, I met with the Department of Education, negotiated with them, and we registered the Western College Remedial Massage Therapies. So up until then, we were still the only school in Saskatchewan and the Prairie provinces. And things went along quite well. We carried on training. We worked out an agreement with the hospital where we moved the school from the YMCA. We moved it over to the Plains Health Center. When it was, Plains not even there anymore. The hospital was closed down. But we had an agreement where they would provide us with space, provided we would allow nurses to come into the program. And that's how we got into there, started training students. And then we slowly it started to become more popular in time. I think I had 12 people in my first course, and we started building it up. Pretty soon we were building it more and more. But there was always different levels of education.
Okay.
There was the basic remedial, what was called the basic remedial massage program. That was approximately about 1 year of studies. And then there was the advanced remedial massage studies program. So people would graduate from the program and they would enter into their practices performing massage, working in the small little clinics, and things started to build and grow. And then you would see people, there was a few that would carry on right away into the more advanced course, which was more orthopedic based. But for the most part, you saw people would take time off. They would build their practices a little bit, and then they kind of wanted to learn some more, and they would come back and take the advanced course later, advanced remedial massage therapy.
So I see that still a lot in my colleagues who are in Alberta and who get a education in Alberta. I do see that after the first year, particularly of training, a lot of them move into think it's called a student position in a clinic kind of thing, where they can do some kind of training, things like that. But yeah, in Saskatchewan, really, you just move on to your second year.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. That has developed, and I'll maybe explain to that as we go through talking about the history. That has developed more so out of a couple of problems, a false interpretation by myself and my good colleague, Mr. Wayne Bateman, that we actually believe there when people use the word therapy, that that it meant orthopedic therapy, and we were so foolishly mistaken by our interpretation because we thought everybody did what we did.
Yeah.
Because you see, until this time, all schools were independent. There was no interaction between schools. Every school was doing their own thing all the time. In 1988, I believe it was 1988 in Saskatchewan, it might have been a little bit later than that, but about 1988, the practicing therapists had now grown to a larger group of individuals, and it was still called the Masseurs Association.
Okay.
Which was, we all totally agreed that that was not the proper term, being a male-driven name for the association. So they wanted to change it. So they decided to change it. They wanted to change it to the Massage Therapists Association. And I can remember Abe Reimer and myself and a couple of the others saying, "Oh my God, you're not going to do that. You're going to have everybody call themselves massage therapists. You're not therapists. Most of these people are massage practitioners."
Yeah.
And then there's some that are therapists. But oh no, they wanted to form. We said, well, if you do this within a few years, it's all going to be mixed in, and nobody's going to be able to tell what anybody is as far as quality and skills. They said, oh, no. The vote came up. They passed the vote. And in fact, you saw at that time in Saskatchewan a split.
Okay.
A large group of people moved out of the association and formed a different association that stayed to that principle of separating the education apart. And that was called the Society of Remedial Massage Therapists, I think is what it was called. Provincial Society of Remedial Massage Therapists.
Does that exist anymore? I don't think it does, hey?
Doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
And then what happened after that was, so in 1988, Saskatchewan Massage Therapy Association forms, because at that time, one of the things was happening, and there and into the early 90s, was the Canadian Massage Therapy Alliance was formed. And they had their ideas, and they were pushed by Ontario and BC as to what that really was. And Saskatchewan was wanting to be part of that. So there was bringing in all these ideas about how things should be run in Saskatchewan. And I remember us being at meetings and saying, no, this is not the way to do it. We're different than what they are, because massage was very different. We didn't even know then that massage was so different in the prairies. So anyway, things went on till about 1994, I opened in 1992, I took over ownership of the massage school from Abe and Don.
Yeah.
And we opened that year an actual facility, because that was the other thing I was pushing for, was we needed to have our own school. So we started our first school on Halifax Street.
Okay. Yeah.
So we actually had a physical body there. So
I went to that school. Were you still, I remember you coming in and doing some guest lectures and things like that. I was in the class, I would have graduated 2004. So between 2002 and 2004, I actually went to school with your niece, Jackie.
Oh, yeah.
And it was still on Halifax Street. And Wayne, of course, was the principal or the director, I guess you'd say. And were you still in ownership then, or was it
I owned it until 2004 when I turned ownership over to Wayne.
Okay. Okay.
And that was just because the campus here was growing so much.
Yeah.
Couldn't be involved in both sides of things at the same time. So I said, you know what? You've been managing it for 10 years, man. It's time for you to take it over and own it.
Okay, so you were still in Regina then around 1994.
Yeah, 94. So what, back in those days, starting in, I can't remember what year that was. Oh God, that would have been about 1990 or something like that. I would be 2 weeks in Regina and 2 weeks in Manitoba, back and forth when I was teaching programs
So what
and going
drew
to
you then
England.
to open as well in Manitoba?
Yeah, we
Because you
opened in
had the two
1990.
schools.
We actually registered the course here in 19 um, in 1988. We registered the campuses here in Manitoba as well.
Okay, yeah.
And or was it? Yeah, I believe it was right around then. Yeah. So yeah,
Okay.
it was. So I was like, some days I was driving all night to be at the next campus to teach classes, and then driving after that back, and was like getting jumping on a plane and flying to
Oh my God.
England and doing all kinds of stuff to take different workshops. But it was, it was a fun, exciting time. But what happened in the over the time frame, to kind of speed things up, because there's lots of little details that played a role in that, was in about 1996. Wayne Baden and I, um, we had I had rewritten the curriculum, and Wayne had helped me do a lot of research into it and develop it. Together, the two of us put a lot of it in, and redesigned what I had originally made changes to. And uh, in about 1996, Wayne and I wanted to go and meet with a doctor of osteopathy out of the United States, Dr. Philip Greenman. So we went down to, and we met with him in Chicago, and toured his facility and had a long chat with him about what we were doing, what he was doing, because what we were doing was a lot of osteopathic work within our course.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the meeting, we went over to, I don't know if you know the name, but Sandy Fitz. She owns a massage school in Michigan. So we went to visit her because we had her at one of our conferences. And Wayne and I were sitting in the hotel room and said, we're not comfortable here. We need to do something else. I says, well, Ontario's right across the border. Why don't we go and visit these schools?
Yeah.
He says, that sounds like a fun trip. So we got up, we jumped in the car, and we drove into Ontario. And that was the first time that schools from outside of Ontario had ever interacted with each other.
Yeah.
So we visited Kakawa College, Sutherland Chan, all the different schools there, and saw what they were doing and how they did it. And in the car driving back to Regina, we was quiet for a while. And I says to Wayne, I said, geez, Wayne, you're pretty quiet. He says, yeah. And I says, are you thinking the same thing as me? And he says, yeah, I think so. He says, all they teach is what we used to teach in the first year.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So anyway, we came back, but by then, because what we did was to make the 2-year program that everybody said you had to have, we took the basic course and the advanced remedial massage course, and we put them together into the 2-year full-time program. And what a mistake that was. We should have just taken and enhanced the basic course and filled in the things that we didn't have. Like they had, at one time, they had 250 hours of hydrotherapy, but there was no curriculum guides at that time. So finally, after being in Ontario, we got the Ontario outline, which they had a college of massage. And we got the outline from them, and we went through it, and we kind of found ways to combine our courses in with what they were describing in different ways. And in any way, and that's how we ended up with a 2-year full-time program in the Prairie provinces. But we were still teaching the remedial work. We were still teaching the osteopathic trend to things.
Yeah.
And so that was very different than what was being taught in Ontario and in British Columbia. And so over the years, with Saskatchewan and Manitoba not being regulated provinces, we were not allowed to even sit in on the meetings. But it's really quite interesting what happened, because in 1996, I believe it was, or after 1997, a guy by the name of Doug Fairweather and the Canadian Council for Massage and Canadian Massage Therapy Alliance. He was
Okay.
a representative of it. And he sent out a call to try and get massage schools to come together.
Okay.
So we attended the meeting. And from that meeting, I said, well, we need to create an association of massage schools. And from that meeting, I became the founder of the Canadian Council for Massage Therapy Schools, CMTCA. So I became that first president of that organization, getting the schools to at least start to talk to each other. So we started to understand better what was happening in schools. And that was an interesting experience. Anyway, we went through that. We did all that sort of thing, and we are still building and working on our school, and then in I can't remember the exact year. So we had a meeting where we called the Canadian Massage Therapy, the Council for Massage Therapy Schools, called the regulators together for a meeting in Vancouver. The regulators had not even ever met before that point, as far as the colleges of massage. So they were called together at this meeting, and by us, and because it was in fact to talk about accreditation.
Okay.
So we
That's
this
a
meeting.
huge meeting, because you've got all of Canada, you've got Ontario way over the east, you got BC, like the culture's there, and then the culture's in the Prairie, and for what's going on, way different.
Oh yeah. So when they were in Vancouver, the three colleges, Ontario, BC, and Newfoundland, which were the only regulated provinces then, from that meeting, that they kind of had a separate meeting, and they formed FOMTRAC, which is now the Council for Massage Therapy Regulators Colleges. So that happened because of the work that we had done trying to get them to come together, because we were all the schools were really trying to get standardization within education. So we were working with CompTIA out of the United States and because they were the only accrediting agency for massage schools.
Okay, so I think the question I have at this point is, where then, with the provinces being all over the place, nobody's really had good conversations with each other, or they're just beginning. When did insurance start to become a thing for massage therapy? Did they recognize, let's say, some provinces and not others? Have they just always paid all along? Is this a new thing? I don't even know, the history of that within the educational process and what they recognize. When did that become a thing?
That was all done independently, and each province was different.
Okay.
In Saskatchewan, what happened was myself and Don Bennett, we happened to know the head of one of the insurance companies, and we had a meeting with them, and we talked to them about the benefits that could come from massage therapy. Now, Ontario, some people had been doing that in Ontario and some in BC as well. And in Ontario was a little different, because you see, in 1978, I think it was 1978, they were looking at redoing the Medical Act, and massage was actually listed in the Medical Act.
Okay.
So it was only a 1-year course at that time in Ontario too.
Yeah.
So the schools got together because there was a threat that they were going to wipe massage out of the Medical Act.
Oh, okay.
So the schools got together and arbitrarily matched up the number of hours in massage to the number of hours in physiotherapy. It was Shirley Desborough, Kakawa College, Sutherland Chan, the four big players back in those days. The first school for massage in Canada was actually taught by the Sikh temple in Ontario.
Wow.
Yeah. there was a group of religious Sikhs there, and they taught the first group of massage therapists in Ontario. And from that grew the 4 different schools that
Okay.
then grew on. So, and I knew all these guys, like we were all buddies anyway over the years. But yeah, so the insurance started to play a role. And what happened in Saskatchewan was remedial massage therapist. You had to be a remedial massage therapist for to get the reimbursement. But back in those days, it was we had to go through a pile of work. Like if you wanted to have insurance reimbursement, there was no third party billing. It was like we would fill the doc and the clients would deal with it.
Yeah.
But you had to do a report. You had to fill out. For London Life was the first one to cover massage, and you had to fill out a report about what was your assessment, what was your prognosis, what was your, why were you doing this massage, how long do you think it was? Quite a medical document we had to fill out and submit in for the clients in order to get coverage. And we did it. SGI was the same way. We talked to SGI. We knew the SGI guys because it just so happened that in Saskatchewan, everything comes out of Saskatchewan, like, out of Regina, it seems like in those days anyway. And we were running our clinic with Don Bennett out of the health club at the YMCA, where all these heads of all the legislature guys were there and the government dudes. That was their gym. Well, we talked to them on a daily basis and convinced them that they should have massage coverage. And sure enough, they approved it. They put it through. So it was all done through, as they say in politics, you learn it's not what's done in the public, it's done what's behind the scenes. And it was all through meetings and knowing who to talk to and how to talk to them. But I tell you, when I started doing massage, I did about 600 letters because no physicians referred. Okay. Nobody referred for massage in those days. Yeah. I did about 600 letters and talked to physicians. And I tell you, I got a lot of doors slammed in my face by the medical profession. But I didn't give up, kept going back. And then pretty soon we started to get referrals. Yeah.
So, okay, going then into the Ontario matching their hours to the physiotherapy course. Did you guys get any flack back saying like, oh, you're just trying to be like physios, you're like the licensed practical physios of the physio world, like kind of like RNs and LPNs, like that differentiation, or was it just smooth sailing?
There was a little bit maybe of that back in those days in Ontario. There was a lot of lobbying back and forth because the physios would have liked to see us not part of the medical team. But that's where it kind of got appeased because they formed their own college of massage. And that kind of, they just separated out, and therefore we were no longer an issue to them.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So and that was in Ontario side of things.
Yeah.
And the other on the other side of things, BC at one time had a 3,000-hour course.
Yeah.
Requirement. And I remember sitting down with John, ran the only massage school in British Columbia back then, West Coast College.
Yeah.
I was sitting with him we were actually both attending a conference in the United States together. And I said to him, okay, John, tell me the truth. How did you come up with this 3,000-hour curriculum? And why? And he says, I'll tell you why. He says, we had all these massage therapists coming out of Ontario and flooding the BC market because it's a beautiful place to live. And he said, well, that was just destroying us. So he said, I sat down one day and I said, we got to put a barrier in. And at that time, he had all of his grads were running the College of Massage in BC. And he just arbitrarily changed the curriculum to 3,000 hours because he was the only school.
Okay.
And then the College of Massage adopted that. And that's why the curriculum in BC was 3,000 hours. Ontario was 2,200 hours, and that's how Newfoundland followed Ontario. And in Saskatchewan, we were looking at things saying, I don't know, how do we even figure out these hours? Because it's not about hours, it was about what you know, right?
Yeah. Competency.
It's competencies. So,
Yeah.
so anyway, life went on and we went through other struggles. Then in uh, uh, the interjurisdictional, eventually the federal government said you have to eliminate unnecessary barriers between provinces for people that are doing the same job. So if you're a massage therapist in Ontario, the massage therapist in BC, you can't have false border reasons for them to practice. So that was forced by the federal government to do that. And so anyway, what happened then again, the regulated provinces got together, no involvement really directly from outside. They got together and they started to form the interjurisdictional document, the agreement on what should be the content of education for massage therapists practicing across Canada. And that's where the interjurisdictional document came from. So and we were all very involved in kind of, like I say, behind the scenes, behind the doors. It would be the regulators out there, but behind the doors we were involved in it a little bit. And eventually what ended up happening was they formed this document. I don't know how much I want to say about that document. It's what it did was because again, we still had all the schools working in isolation of one another to some degree. So they brought together what BC said and what Ontario was saying, and the terminology was different. Even today, when you read through the interjurisdictional document, there's many things that we look at and we say, well, what does that mean? There's no definitions of certain things within it. Like the document, unfortunately, used a lot of proprietary terms rather than science terms.
Yeah.
Which drove me just about crazy, because I had taken all the time to make sure our course was science-based. We do a technique, you know why you're doing the technique. We've got support behind it as to this is neurophysiologically how it works, and there's rationalization into why we're doing the techniques. And that was good. But when you looked at the documents, there would be, like they had things in the early documents, discussions about some kind of heel bump, pump bump, and I'll go, what is a pump bump? Like, what is that? Then finally I found out it's, calcare buildup on the heel of a person. But I'm thinking like pump bump. What is a pump bump? There was no science to what they were using. They were just putting things together and trying to make, because the government was forcing this to occur, to get them to kind of come to some agreement.
Okay.
So it was a very challenging document that was then thrown on the rest of us to deal with. And then eventually was produced, and we started to look at it, and 85 to 90% of what was in the competency document was what we were teaching in the first year of our studies. And so anyway, so that was in place now. Okay, great. So we got an interjurisdictional document. Now we can proceed forward. So the next step in the process was I was still pushing for accreditation. We need to have an accreditation body. We don't have a Canadian accreditation body. So I went representing all the schools in Canada. I went and I became, as a result of the discussions, I became one of the 3 founders for the Canadian Massage Therapy Accreditation process. Okay. So there was myself, there was sorry, I can't remember her first name, Green.
Susan?
Susan, not Susan. No,
sure.
Is it Susan? Lori Green.
Oh, yeah.
Lori Green represented the Canadian Massage Therapy Alliance. and which was supposedly all the associations, although NHPC wasn't part of them, but that was a whole nother discussion. But and then there was Corinne from Ontario that represented the regulators. So the three of us were the founders for the accreditation of Canada, massage in Canada. So we got the framework, the structure all laid out as to how it would be agreeable with these three different groups to work together. And then, and I'll admittedly say it, you know, Ontario and Corinne did a fabulous job at supporting it. The schools were supporting it, but in the last bit, the associations really stuck it to the rest of us, because it was an agreed upon process where the regulators would pay 1/3 of the cost. The associations representing all the massage therapists would pay 1/3 of the cost, and the schools would pay 1/3 of the cost when it came to accreditation.
Okay, and I can imagine that was pretty pricey. That was probably
it was $21 per massage practitioner.
Oh,
that's what happened. That's what the cost was. And in fact, in Saskatchewan, I believe they implemented the collection of the money from the members to go back in your records, but they never put it towards accreditation.
Okay.
And now it's up to the schools to actually have to cover the cost if you're outside of a regulated province. So the regulators are still supporting it. The schools are still supporting it, but the associations are not supporting it outside of the regulated provinces. And as a result of that, it costs every private school that's not in a regulated province, we have to cover the whole cost, which is $100 per student.
Okay. So yeah.
So and that's fine. The schools are willing to work with doing that sort of thing, but we really kind of got, you know, that was a really disheartening thing that caused a lot of problems and irritations between schools and that. But there's all kinds of issues that have gone on over the years.
So tell me about your transition. When you started transitioning just to the Winnipeg campus, the differences right now in between massage therapy, the state of it in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, what you're seeing there.
Well, I think the big thing in that we've seeing happening now is, of course, we have the discussion. You know, we got the interjurisdictional document, we got accreditation, we got all these things going on, but now we're being faced with the next thing, which is in your province. Now, I'm not going to say I know 100% on this, but I've been keeping an eye on it. But my understanding is they have gone through the first 3 readings of the royal descent, but it has not yet been enacted, is my understanding.
We've gotten royal assent for our Massage Therapy Act, and that's happened. So right now, as far as I can explain it, is that there is a council that is currently building the College of Massage of Saskatchewan, and that would include people from all of the schools, people from all of the associations, and any sort of industry partner that would have a real foothold in there. But then as well, they're bringing in physicians and physiotherapists and a lot of different professionals that I'm just going to be blunt. Most of my audience knows that I'm not particularly overjoyed at the thought of creating a college of massage right now or how it's happening. I prefer self-regulation over government regulation. I don't necessarily think they can do a better job than what we can do. That is definitely my opinion. And I know a lot of people have a different opinion about that, but that's definitely where I'm at with it. I'm quite disappointed.
Just a couple things I can clarify for you a little bit. I know there's a council that's supposed to be working towards creating this.
Yeah.
I know there's not the involvement of the schools like they're saying that there is.
Okay.
Schools are being kind of people, whatever discussions are going on, they're going on kind of behind doors, and then the people are throwing it at the schools as to how we're going to deal with it. Even to the point of there's huge problems with questions and how, I know that there was a recent discussion within the last year about even examination questions within the province that are being used, and there was a group uh, one group brought forward these questions to be reviewed, and they were reviewed by school representatives, and as to why these students were not getting these questions correct. And the fact of the matter was the questions were all wrong. So I know there's all kinds of things on that side that are causing all kinds of it. Like, the problem is people are saying good things, or they're talking good talk, but the fact of the matter is they're not really getting down to the facts of it. Now, when it comes to regulation, in a province, a regulation can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. But the question that starts out in regulation is usually you establish a regulatory body when there is a possibility of a risk of harm. There is no cases of harm being generated by a massage therapist. The documents that they've used to show risk of harm could be, in fact, most of them were thrown out in the end because it just showed that they were not. But
when I found out about that we had to prove that we were a risk to the public, I was just blown away. I was like, a risk for what? Putting my elbow in your butt? Are you serious? Like, I just found it such an over the top proposal that we would try to prove that we are a risk to the public, when obviously, and it's different now, and particularly in my practice, like I have a lot of physician contact and a lot of physician clients and all that type of thing, and they're like, a risk to the public? Are you kidding me? With what you do? I don't think on this comparative scale that we have really taken that into consideration. They're like, we actually kill people on a daily basis. What is your risk? Causing a bruise? Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's
well, there's lots of people. There's a percentage of people that want massage to blow it into being something more than the other. I'll give you a very simple example of that. So, for example, one of the things that is stated is you need to clean your massage table between every client, right?
Yeah.
Right. Now, I'm not working with any blood-bearing blood exposure or body fluids or those sorts of things. But let's just step back from that for a minute, and let's look at this. So I have a heating pad, I have a sheepskin, and I have a sheet over my massage table. So what I'm supposed to do is remove all of that and clean my entire massage table between every client to avoid. Like, come on, that doesn't make any logical sense. But then on top of that, there's nothing about I can put the heating pad and the sheepskin back on the table and now cover it with a sheet.
Yeah.
So there's people that they want to put in these ideas, but they don't really think about, you just don't take what the medical profession says and say it applies to massage therapy because different environments.
Yeah.
Well, there's not a lot of thought process, I think, sometimes when it comes to those sorts of things.
Yeah.
As far as the regulation goes, like, I'm not 100% against regulation.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, I think it needs to be put in with a logical approach to things. Like, I think if you're doing like what we've trained our students in orthopedic treatments on the cervical C1, C2, yes, there is a risk of harm of something could happen there. But if all you're going to do is regulate this interjurisdictional document, well, you're not going to hurt anybody with efferage, petrissage, and friction.
Yeah.
So those things think really need to be thought out a little bit more seriously. The other part of it is, and I hear this in multiple provinces, is they say, well, if they want regulation because they want to be more respected. First of all, respected by who is the first question that comes to my mind. Because I don't think a physiotherapist is going to respect you anymore because now you got a regulation.
No.
Then I hear, well, they want to protect the public. And I go, well, you're going to protect the public from what?
Yes.
Well, the argument has been said, well, sexual impropriety. Well, if that's the case, and that's true, we should have absolutely no sexual charges being laid in BC or Ontario, which is a regulated province. But the fact of the matter is, that's not the case.
Yeah.
And the cost associated for lawyers and things to cover the cases that are coming up is so great that in British Columbia, they're actually they are in fact merging together multiple different colleges into one because they can't afford to have 4 separate ones.
Yeah. I was going to ask about that and how, if you had any insight onto why they were merging, because I knew they were merging. I didn't necessarily have a lot of back knowledge about what's going on with that.
Well, there's a couple reasons as to why. One of the first reasons is there's been a movement in government over the last 8 years to move into creating what's called the lean. The fact of the matter is the governments are broke. They're all broke. Across the provinces, all of them are broke. Federal government's broke. They don't got any money. And the fact of the matter is they're looking internally to say, where can we reduce cost? So running 4 different colleges that are in similarly close prox work doesn't make logical sense because you got boards of lawyers, you got administrators, you got all these for all these different groups that have to be wages paid out. Bring them into one, have one college of massage, and it looks over all 4 of those different areas. From a political point of view, that makes very good logical sense.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is some colleges have greater expense than other colleges in court cases and those sorts of things. So bringing the dues from 4 different colleges into one allows them a bigger pot of money to cover the expenses, right? So that's another factor that plays a role. Now, the unfortunate thing is if you don't have a lot of lobbying ability, like chiropractors got huge lobbying ability, naturopaths, these guys are charging big dollars in their practices. They pay big membership fees. You can lobby the government and have a little bit of word what's going to happen. What's going to happen to the massage therapists? Especially you're put into with all these other organized groups that are very often your employers. There's a huge conflict of interest going to occur there. So there's a lot of questions I have as to how are you going to deal with this, the logistics of how you're going to make this work. But nobody seems to want to ask those types of questions in BC out there. But you can guarantee you this, if it happens in one province, it will happen in the rest of the provinces. Because
I'm worried about that. Yeah, I'm worried about that. Where is it at in Manitoba right now? What's going on there?
Manitoba, well, it depends on who you talk to. In Manitoba, the truth of the matter is they have discussed regulation in the province, and the government has acknowledged that there needs to be discussion, and that's it.
Okay.
And some people will say, well, we're on the path to getting this. No, you're not. You're not. It's just sitting kind of in limbo. Nobody's doing anything with it. The government is broke. They don't want to get involved in another situation. And I'm sure in Saskatchewan, if COVID hadn't come along, you wouldn't have regulation going on in that province either. But when it comes to regulation, there's positive sides to regulation, but there's negative sides to regulations, and people need to be given all the sides of what it is. Like And the problem that you run into is, you have, we'll say 800 or 1,000 massage therapists, um, and they have a meeting to talk about a regulation. 100 people attend,
Yeah.
and 60 people vote, or 54 people vote out of the 100 to say, yes, we want regulation. And all of a sudden, all massage therapists want regulation. That's what happens in a democratic system. I
Yeah.
understand that. That's the way that it works.
Yeah.
But was it ever really officially and laid out as to, attend this meeting or don't attend this meeting? But here are the different sides of what could happen, and that were the people properly informed before the approval was put in place? I would have to say no, and I keep pretty close provincial. And I know they've had representatives of the College of Massage. Well, the college represents government. So of course
Yeah.
they're going to come in and they're going to tell you all about the great things about regulation. What about bringing in the practitioners that are in their clinics? They're saying, well, I can tell you right now, I do 8 hours a week more paperwork
Yeah.
as a result of regulation. And the other thing is they've lived with regulation for a lot of years. Let's talk to the people in New Brunswick that
Yeah.
they had to go through this transition. They can compare, because an Ontario therapist can't compare because it's been around since 1988, 78.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so the whole picture of that is warped. But I've always said that this is the problem that we have within the massage sector is associations are not doing what they should be doing. And I'll tell you exactly what I think they should be doing. And I've talked and I work here with the people that do the investigations for complaints.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And the first thing is the number of complaints that come up against massage therapists are very often misinterpretations of something, and they are not actually sexual assault cases. And
Okay.
what I mean by that is quite simple. There are laws in Canada against sexual misconduct.
Yes.
And if there were actually cases or grounds for the complaints that come forward or accusations that come forward, we would see a lot more cases going on in the courts where people were being charged with sexual, but it's not happening. So why is it not happening? And the reason is because it's lots of times it's misinterpretation within what a therapist is doing. And this is when, person comes in with the idea, I'm going to have a relaxation massage, and now someone starts doing cranial sacral therapy on them, which is not what they were really looking for, but they don't really know. So the problem lies with a couple things. The first one is massage therapists need to stop grabbing the money. And the first time you see a new client, you sit down with them for a half an hour and you do a proper consultation, not the 2-second consultations that I see in almost every practice. But you sit down, you talk to them about why are they there. You talk to them about massage therapists. You talk to them about what you do. You talk to them about how the treatment is going to go. And then you say to them, if you would like to continue on, then we will proceed into the treatment area. But the first time you see a new client, you need to go through a proper professional consultation. And if you're not going to do that, you're going to open up all kinds of problems because nobody really knows what you're doing. Okay. Like I do manipulative therapy. So when I go into an interaction with a new client of mine, I make sure they understand what I do.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to have to expose. I'm going to work in your obturators. Here's a picture. There's where the muscle is. That's what's causing. And that's the other problem. When you're getting into rehabilitation, are the therapists telling the clients and showing the clients what they are found wrong and why they're going in to treat it? Or are they just incorporating it into the general body massage?
Yeah.
Right? So the problem I put this onto is to the therapists themselves. They've created this problem. And until we start doing proper consultation, we start to respect our own industry better.
Yeah.
And say we are therapists and we are professionals. And that means you've got to go through these steps. You've got to be accountable for what you do. It's not just, oh yeah, what would you like to do, like me to work on today, Martha? No, that's a body work course or
Okay.
a spot. It's not remedial massage therapist or a massage therapy treatment.
For
In
sure.
a therapy treatment relationship, I'm going to tell you as the client what I've found wrong and what I'm going to do to treat it. And now tell me if you agree with me proceeding with the treatment or not.
So
That's what they're.
going through that whole assessment progress, uh, and going through the whole assessment, having the consultation, not only to know what's wrong with the client, but as a protection for yourself as a therapist,
Yeah,
so that all of the expectations are extremely clear. You
exactly.
know what's going on, that the client has been told what's going on, really solid communication as a protection for the therapist and as a protection for the client. Because if they have different expectations, that's when the
Yeah,
miscommunication, that's when the misinterpretation is going to happen. Okay. Do you
that's
think maybe particularly too, it'd be even more important for you as a man uh, to do that? Because when I do see cases come up where there's uh, accusations against therapists, generally I've seen them against men, and sometimes I don't believe them, sometimes I do believe them, but I'm like, I don't know. And the thought often goes through my head, like, did the patient really know what they were trying to do, right? Did they know? And that often goes through my head because there's such a variety in how people treat. If they're not being communicated to, I do wonder if some of those sexual assault cases, especially towards men, if they happen because of that. And I'm sure that
absolutely.
there have been cases that are just very true and very inappropriate,
Yeah,
but I do wonder about those.
you're absolutely right. You know, the problem, well, we there's a lot of things that come to mind, like for example, the consent process. So when you
Yeah.
go to a physiotherapist, do you have to go through 25 pages of consent? Like it's like we've got laws that are put up like, oh my God, it's like you're guilty of doing something, so I got to get approval. And you know, so they're going, so people are doing it, they're valid, the therapists are very competent, they're going in, they're making sure I'm going to work on your hip right now,
Yeah.
or I'm going to work in your inner thigh doing massage, or on your legs, is it okay if I proceed? The client says yeah, but have they told them why they're going to
Yeah.
work on that leg? Or are they just getting consent to go ahead, and there's now has to be a trust by the client that you're not going to do something else? Whereas if you would have had a poster on the wall and you would have said, this muscle is hypertonic, you can see where it attaches here. I need to work this over. So that's why I'm going to be working in this area. Now, at any time, if you're feeling that I'm getting an area where you're uncomfortable, just let me know. And you know
Mhm.
what? I can get one of my female colleagues to come in here and work with you. I can give you a referral. That's what I would be doing as a therapist. I
Yeah.
can give you the referral for to go to someone else to feel more, but this muscle needs to be worked on, irregardless.
Yeah.
The client is going to go, okay, I know exactly why you're in there.
Yeah.
Right. And if I'm doing rehabilitation, I'm sorry, it's not always feel good. It's like
Yeah.
it's gonna hurt a little bit when I get in here and do this treatment. You start to, if you take more pride in what you do, but for the most part, people are doing the interjurisdictional document, which is basic relaxation massage.
Okay.
So it opens up all kinds of problems along that way. But you know, there's the therapists make problems for it, and even within the associations themselves, and this is across the board, I think this is true too. These associate these associations are so pushed on con ed and things like that. We're not doctors who they're learning new surgical interventions that I should be keeping update on, that I'm going to be. We're doing effleurage the same way we've done effleurage for 1,500 to 2,000 years, way
Yes.
back when the Romans did it. It's not changed what we do for a living. The con ed that we should be forcing, and I'm saying forcing the massage therapist to do, is the things that we're seeing that are problematic. That's what an association's role is. They should be having, okay, let's take a 3-year span. Okay, we have noticed that there have been cases of fraud brought up by the insurance companies. Every massage therapist within the next 3 years has to have a refresher on fraud practices within your clinic. That's con ed that's beneficial.
Okay.
If there is sexual impropriety, what we have seen happening, then there should be con ed on sexual harassment prevention in your treatment room. That's a con ed requirement. But a con ed requirement for you, I don't know what you do in your practice necessarily, but you go and I have to get 12 hours of continued education. So the only course that's available is aromatherapy. I never want to do aromatherapy, but I'll take that course because it is totally ludicrous, you know, and ridiculous way of approaching continued education. If you want your registration this year, you have to prove to us that in the last 3 years you've done these things, because they're the requirements. You have to have CPR every year if that's what the requirement is. But that's as far as associations should be revolved in regarding continued education.
Okay.
They should be having con ed workshops where right now in Saskatchewan, now they should be saying you're required to attend a workshop in the next year on legislation. And how is it going to impact you? What are you going to have to do? What is going to be going on? They should be starting, this should be the con ed that the association is working on. As far as you practitioner, go and learn whatever you want. Like, I don't know, maybe you do in your practice, you learned about, there's a new tractional towel technique that I've saw done out of California. And I think I'm going to fly down there and take that because I don't know, but it might benefit what I'm doing because I do cervical treatment. Okay, that's good for you. But for someone who works in Ten Spa, that's of no benefit to them whatsoever. So, you know, these are the things that we need. The industry itself really needs to look. It's not at a point yet to be regulated.
Yeah.
The first thing they need to do is clean up their own house before they move into regulation. And I think by putting those things in, required continued education for sexual awareness, and required for fraudulent case studies, case components. If you put those things in, then I would say, yep, you can be self-regulated. But there would be no need for a college. But if the associations are not going to take their role more respectably and do the things they need to do, then you need to have a college of massage that force people to do it. And that sort of thing. Like, you know, even in the massage schools now, we have like, it's not just about teaching you how to do massage. Our students now are going through truth and reconciliation as a course they have to take. They have to take a course on sexual harassment and prevention as part right from day one. But then once they graduate, you're kind of on your own. Do whatever you want as long as you get the credit hours. You know, so that these things can be stopped before we need to have, in my opinion, we need to have a college of massage. And the other thing is, even in the provinces where there is a college of massage, there needs to be better communication between the schools and the colleges of massage, because, you know, you've got content expertise in all these massage schools, yet they'll try and have a different group of people create the curriculum that don't know. They're not teachers, they're not educated, they don't, you know, they you know, like, even the questions on the tests are like, well, they're pretty amazing, you know. So there's a lot of things that can be done to improve the environment of massage, and it can be done through internal self-studies. And, you know, and some of the things I really get frustrated with associations about is because they say, well, we can't do that. You know what? You signed a paper that said that you're going to abide by the association and the rules and the policies and remain yourself in good standing. There's nothing wrong with me publishing a list that says the following individual is no longer in good standing with this association. You know, that's not you. You've done it. Like you don't need to have a college of massage to do it.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing is that this, like, some people think that, oh, well, if we get regulated, then all the different insurance companies and that sort of thing, they're going to recognize us. No, they're not. That's a fallacy. People have that fantasy in their mind, but that's not what's going to happen. Those things are driven by dollars and cents.
Yeah.
And they're driven very much like group insurance is what we're talking about here. We're not talking about being part of the healthcare system.
Yeah.
Group insurance is driven by the owner of the company. That's who drives it. And if I say, you know what, my premium's gone too high because people are using too damn much massage, that company is going to look at that and say, well, where can I either cut something else of the premium out and get more money to massage, or I'm going to reduce the premium allowed for massage because it's killing me.
Yeah.
On the other end. That's
well, Green Shield tried to do that a couple years ago. They tried to really steer things away from massage therapy because, and I read the article, it said it was their most used benefit.
Yep.
And the way they tried to steer it was, you know what, we feel like mental health should be more of a priority for people. So instead, we're going to designate these dollars towards mental health. And I knew damn well that was just like, that was smoke and mirrors. It said right in their article, massage therapy was the most utilized modality that they gave insurance for. That is the reason why you were taking it away. It had nothing to do with caring about mental health and wanting to steer the dollars that way. They knew the money wouldn't be taken from that pot as readily as it was from massage.
Yeah. And the fact of the matter is it comes down to what me as a business owner can afford to pay.
Yeah.
You know, and because you know, you'll pay a portion, but the business has to pay the other portion of it. And yeah, you're exactly right. But don't think it's gone away. That Green Shields was just the one that had enough guts to come out and do it. The rest are all talking about it.
Yeah.
So what happens tomorrow? Let's say tomorrow, when you wake up and there's no more insurance coverage for massage, what's going to happen to these clinics?
Yeah.
You know, they've outpriced themselves. In a lot of cases, I believe they've outpriced themselves. Like, you know what? And I hear this story about, I hear this all the time about, well, massage is hard work and I can only handle doing 5 treatments a day. That's a bunch of guys. You know what? I treated 12 hours a day when I was in practice, solid one after the other all day long. And you get to the point where you've done 10 treatments, you think like you haven't done anything.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, the reason that we can do that and only treat 5 treatments at clients a day is because the fee that we're charging is so high, is putting us into a reasonable income. And none of us want to work more than we actually have to work.
I agree with you. I hear that so often from people, and they'll use things like, and okay, whatever, work-life balance, the whole bit or whatever. But oh, well, it causes my body so much injury. And then I just think, okay, compared to what? Compared to a carpenter, they're all coming out with, arthritis as well. They're working in -40 weather outside. The guys on the rigs, they're having a much harder time than my air-conditioned space with butterfly music in the background. Yeah. And so I don't know, that whole like, oh, it's hard on the body. I'm like, compared
only
to
hard
what?
on the body
really?
if you don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
It's only hard. It's quite interesting because this is a North American issue.
Okay.
My colleagues, when I go to England, my colleagues been practicing 40 years, 25 years, 30 years. How's your body doing? Fabulous. I'm going out golfing tomorrow.
Yeah.
And they're working full weeks and doing treatments all day long.
Yeah.
And the thing, this is a North American thing that we've gotten into. This. I don't know where it came from, but the fact of the matter is, the dollars and cents can allow us to do it. I guess otherwise we would work more.
For
right?
sure.
It comes down to that sort of thing. But there's lots of different things that can be improved in our sector. But if I was to summarize, over the 40 years, where did we start and where are we today? Well, I'll tell you, we're almost exactly back to where we started 40 years ago. Because 40 years ago, we did correspondence programs. We were taught practical components in our work courses. We did most massage providers were year one basic practitioners.
Yeah.
And a smaller group of remedial therapists at the other end. 40 years later, we've gone through all kinds of things and changes. We got this beautiful interjurisdictional document that for my colleague in Regina, Wayne,
yeah,
we look at that document and say, we can't find anything in here other than basic massage application. It's mostly professional practice within the actual interjurisdictional document. So now we got a situation where, okay, now instead of a 1-year course, we have a 2-year massage therapy course or massage course. The students do 70% of their studies online.
Yes.
As a result of COVID. They attend practical classes about on average 2 full days to 3 days a week. And they go out and they make a living.
Yeah.
So the fact of the matter is, 40 years later, we're just about back to exactly where we started. In fact, and to the point, like our school now, we've seen this happening. I predicted this was going to happen 20 years ago. And we are now just about to open up what's called a master's in manual therapy course.
Okay. Yeah.
Because we don't want to associate with the word massage anymore.
Yeah.
Because the therapists who are graduating out of our program, they have skill sets that they're not given the respect for.
Yeah.
So we've said, okay, fine. If that's what the massage therapist is, okay, that's what the industry has declared. I support that. So then leave me alone. And for those that want to come back and learn how to do orthopedic work and treat conditions, then we'll teach them the higher grade manipulative therapy or give them a mastery in manual therapy.
Yeah.
And so you end up doing it. Like we're right, like I say, I'm feeling right back where we started.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you, Randy, for joining me today. I want to be mindful of your time.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's probably a good time to end the interview. And thank you so much for meeting and just going over everything and just giving me your unbridled opinion on things. I really appreciate it. And I think it will benefit a lot of therapists to listen to what you have to say and your wisdom.
Great.
Okay.
Well, I hope to talk to you again, Randy.
You know what? We'll do this again sometime. We will.
For sure.
Okay.
All right.
I will stop recording.